Albert Luthuli, South Africa, 1960. Albert Luthuli was the first African and the first person from outside Europe and the Americas to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Luthuli was awarded the prestigious award in 1960 for his role in championing for nonviolent resistance to racial discrimination in South Africa. The Nobel Committee describes Luthuli as a man of noble bearing, charitable, intolerant of hatred, and adamant in his demands for equality and peace among all men. Luthuli was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence. He became the spokesman for a campaign of civil disobedience directed against South Africa's policy of racial segregation, and spearheaded several demonstrations and strikes against the white minority government. He was born in 1898 and was elected president of the African National Congress (ANC) in 1952. During his acceptance speech, Luthuli noted that the award was a recognition of sacrifice made by many of all races, particularly the African people, who had endured and suffered for long. Luthuli died at the age of 69, in 1967 after a fatal accident near his home in Stanger, now known as KwaDukuza in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Anwar al-Sadat, Egypt, 1978. Anwar al-Sadat, President of Egypt, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize together with Menahem Begin, Prime Minister of Israel. The two were awarded in 1978 for their contribution to the two frame agreements on peace in the Middle East and on peace between Egypt and Israel, which were signed at Camp David, USA in September 17, 1978. Born on 25 December 1918, Anwar al-Sadat was Egypt's third president from 15 October 1970. During his presidency, he changed the political and economic landscape of Egypt. One of his notable change was his efforts towards building comprehensive peace agreement with Israel and return of Sinai to Egypt, which Israel had occupied since the Six-Day War of 1967. In November 1977, Sadat became the first Arab leader to visit Israel officially when he met with Israeli Prime Minister Menahem Begin, and spoke before the assembly in Jerusalem about his views on how to achieve a comprehensive peace to the Arab-Israeli conflict, which included the full implementation of UN resolutions that sought the establishment of a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. Sadat was assassinated 1981. Desmond Tutu, South Africa, 1984. Desmond Tutu is a world-renowned preacher, human rights activist and a strident voice against apartheid. The retired Anglican bishop won the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in resolving and ending apartheid in South Africa. The Nobel Committee saluted him for his clear views and his fearless stance, and characteristics which had made him a unifying symbol for all African freedom fighters. Known as the voice of the voiceless black South Africans, he was an outspoken critic of apartheid. Tutu supported the economic boycott of South Africa, while constantly encouraging reconciliation between various factions associated with apartheid. He was born in 1931 in Klerksdorp, Transvaal, South Africa. He went on to become the first black Anglican Archbishop of both Cape Town and Johannesburg. He has traveled extensively, championing human rights and the equality of all people, both within South Africa and internationally. He has also focused on drawing awareness to issues such as poverty, AIDS and non-democratic governments in the Third World. Nelson Mandela, South Africa, 1993. Nelson Mandela, one of the most celebrated human rights symbols of the 20th century, is a man whose dedication to the liberties of his people inspires human rights advocates throughout the world. Born in 1918, Mandela was elected leader of the youth wing of the ANC, African National Congress, liberation movement in early 1950s. When the country's white minority government prohibited the ANC in 1960. Mandela became convinced that armed struggle was inevitable. Inspired by the guerrilla wars in Algeria and Cuba, he organized a military underground movement that engaged in sabotage. In 1962 he was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment for high treason and conspiracy against the state. From 1964 to 1982 he was confined to the notorious prison island Robben Island, together with several other resistance leaders. He was then moved to a prison on the mainland until his release in 1990. After the release, Mandela intensified his battle against oppression. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 jointly with the then-President Frederick Willem de Klerk for their work of the peaceful termination of the apartheid regime, and for laying the foundations for a new democratic South Africa. Mandela became South Africa's democratically elected president in 1994, an office he held until 1999 when he retired. Frederick Willem de Klerk, South Africa, 1993. Frederick Willem de Klerk was South Africa's president during apartheid. After assuming office in 1989, he called for a non-racist South Africa and announced his policy of reform. He hoped to create a suitable climate for negotiations which would end apartheid and bring about a new constitutional dispensation for South Africa, based on the principle of one person, one vote. He then lifted the ban on the ANC and released Nelson Mandela. After the release of Mandela, negotiations together with other party leaders were held for the peaceful end of apartheid and transition to democratic rule. Negotiations together with other party leaders were held for the peaceful end of apartheid and transition to democratic rule. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 together with Nelson Mandela for their efforts to bring reforms in South Africa. Frederick Willem de Klerk was born in 1936 in Johannesburg to Senator Jan de Klerk, a leading politician who became a minister in the South African government. Kofi Annan, Ghana, 2001. In 2001, Ghana's Kofi Annan, the then UN Secretary, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize jointly with the United Nations for their work for a better organized and more peaceful world. Kofi Annan was born in Ghana in 1938. He served as the 7th Secretary-General of the United Nations from January 1997 to December 2006. He received the Peace Prize for having revitalized the UN and for having given priority to human rights. He received the Peace Prize for having revitalized the UN and for having given priority to human rights. The Nobel Committee also recognized his commitment to the struggle to contain the spreading of the HIV virus in Africa and his declared opposition to international terrorism. Wangari Maathai, Kenya, 2004. Wangari Maathai, environmentalist and founder of the Green Belt movement, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004 for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy and peace. The Nobel Committee acknowledged her efforts in standing up courageously against the former oppressive regime in Kenya. Her unique forms of action contributed to drawing attention to political oppression, nationally and internationally. They termed her as an inspiration for many in the fight for democratic rights and especially an encouragement to women. Born in 1940, Wangari Maathai was the first woman from Africa to be honored with the Nobel Peace Prize. Mohammed El-Baradei, Egypt, 2005. Mohammed El-Baradei, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA), received the Nobel Peace Prize jointly with the UN's nuclear watchdog IAEA for their efforts to prevent nuclear energy from being used for military purposes and to ensure that nuclear energy for peaceful purposes is used in the safest possible way. The Nobel Committee noted that El-Baradei had done much in strengthening the IAEA as an organization and the increasing accession to the nuclear non-proliferation regime. Mohammed El-Baradei was born in Cairo in 1942. Before becoming head of the IAEA, he had worked for a number of years as an Egyptian diplomat and in the United Nations. Mohammed El-Baradei was born in Cairo in 1942. Before becoming head of the IAEA, he had worked for a number of years as an Egyptian diplomat and in the United Nations. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Liberia, 2011. Liberia's president was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 alongside peace activist Lima Bowie and Tawakkol Carmen for the non-violent struggle for the safety of women and for women's rights to full participation in peace-building work. Sirleaf was elected as Liberia's president in 2005, just 2 years after the bloody civil wars that ravaged the country for more than a decade had just ended. As the first female head of state ever to be democratically elected in Africa, She has worked to promote peace, reconciliation and social and economic development. Lima Bowie, Liberia, 2011. During the civil war that ravaged Liberia, Bowie called together women from different ethnic and religious groups in the fight for peace. Dressed in white T-shirts, they held daily demonstrations at the fish market in Monrovia. After having collected money, she led a delegation of Liberian women to Ghana to put pressure on the warring factions during the peace talk process. This played a decisive role in ending the war. Bowie also worked to help those who suffered psychological trauma during the civil war in Liberia, including child soldiers. This played a decisive role in ending the war. Bowie also worked to help those who suffered psychological trauma during the civil war in Liberia, including child soldiers. National Dialogue Quartet, Tunisia, 2015. The National Dialogue Quartet is a group of 4 organizations that were central in the attempts to build a plurality democracy in the wake of a revolution in Tunisia in 2011. The quartet is made up of the Tunisian General Labour Union, the Tunisian Confederation of Industry, Trade and Handicrafts, the Tunisian Human Rights League, and the Tunisian Order of Lawyers. The group succeeded in creating a peaceful dialogue. Through a mediating role, the quartet allowed political and religious divides to be bridged, and a democratic development followed. They were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its decisive contribution to the building of a pluralistic democracy in Tunisia in the wake of the Jasmine Revolution of 2011. Thanks for watching. As usual, we feature stories which shows the ingenuity or positive side of Africa. Please remember to subscribe to this channel and share.